Bang, bang, coming to you live-ish, not really. Once again, got Polina here. Hello.
Hey, you all cool cats
Oh
and
my
kittens.
God.
I'm wearing a shirt like that.
Are you really hitting us with Tiger King intros right now?
Yeah.
All right, we're going to have a conversation with the talent to see if she's invited back after this. You can't go rogue like that. It's not allowed. There's a lot going on in the world today. I appreciate you guys tuning in as Wall Street's trying to get rich. The rest of us just trying to get our lunch money right. This new show will come to you noonish-ish because we don't have our shit together. Could be at noon, before noon, afternoon, or maybe 5 o'clock. With Polina here, obviously, we try to be a little bit more prompt and try to be a little bit better organized. She's got notes and topics. So here we go. The first one, SoftBank and WeWork. What's going on with that?
SoftBank has pulled the $3 billion tender offer for WeWork shares.
All right, this is a big deal because WeWork basically is a complete shit show. And I saw earlier that somebody was like, oh, WeWork's going to get screwed because of the real estate market in New York. And I tweeted and said, no, WeWork's going to get screwed because WeWork was stupid, basically. So what was the $3 billion tender offer?
So my question here was, WeWork already had cold feet. It was reported a few weeks ago. People were nervous that it would kind of back out of its commitment to buy back $3 billion worth of shares that was negotiated last year. My question here is, does that mean that Adam Neumann doesn't get his $1 billion?
Yeah, so the whole idea was that SoftBank, the largest investor, had agreed in writing, signed contract to buy back $3 billion worth of shares from other investors, from Adam Neumann, and from employees to build a bigger position. And basically they were going to provide this like liquidity event to the company. Now, all of a sudden, SoftBank says, we're not going to do that. That includes Adam Neumann not getting his, I think it was $970 million that he's not going to get now, along with all of the other investors. Benchmark's got like $350 million they're not going to get, et cetera.
Right. But if you remember, there were certain conditions that had to be met in order for SoftBank to buy back the $3 billion.
That's true.
So some of those conditions were unfulfilled, including the failure to obtain the necessary antitrust approvals by April 1, 2020, which was yesterday.
So there's basically going to be a legal battle here, right?
Yeah.
I think Benchmark and others have said, hey, we're willing to pursue litigation on this. SoftBank's basically saying, well, here's a bunch of things that were supposed to happen that haven't happened. I don't think you and I are going to solve this right now, but in desperate times, especially in financial crisis like this, there's a lot of jockeying that goes on, and people make reputations or break their reputations. And we've seen people pull term sheets and all kinds of bad activities. Obviously, this is another one of those.
Although I thought it was interesting that one of the conditions says the existence of multiple new actions by governments around the world related to COVID-19. How the hell was WeWork supposed to predict COVID-19?
Oh, they probably had some kind of, end of world clause or something like that. Hey, by the way, I just noticed, nobody joke, there's Oreos back there.
You did not notice. You set them up. Why do you think they're sitting up like that?
Well, listen, sometimes we got to have a little fun on here. All right, next is not so much fun. Unemployment numbers. Today, the jobless claims came out for the last week. If you remember last week, it was the largest increase ever in jobless claims, 3.28 million Americans. The high before had been just under 700,000 back in 1982. This week, unfortunately, we saw 6.6 million Americans file for unemployment claims. That's about 10 million new claims over the last 2 weeks. And what that does is it puts us, around 9% unemployment in the United States?
Yeah. And this is the thing that I was worried about. The chief investment strategist at Charles Schwab said, sadly, this probably underestimates the actual numbers because of the overload in the systems and not every call getting through. I was clearing my throat.
Just being safe over here. I need some more social distancing.
So not everybody's actually getting through. So that number is actually an underestimate.
Yeah, well, there's a couple of contributions to that, right? I think one of them is the fact that people can't get through. Like literally last week I think it was New York and Texas, there was 1.7 million people who called and tried to file claims, but only 230,000 of them or so got included. We've obviously seen some of them get through now, but there's still more people who haven't been able to file. Then you get things like the gig economy, right? So all the freelancers, all of the drivers, et cetera, they're not eligible for unemployment because they were 1099 employees and things like that. And then you also just get people who either are undocumented workers or they don't apply. Right. So kind of the real unemployment number is much, much higher. And unfortunately, I think it's going to continue to get worse over time.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really sad.
It is really sad. But the best way to fix the economy, put American businesses back to work, get American workers back to work. Obviously, there's a health crisis going on, but we're going to have to eventually solve the problem that way. So we'll see how long that takes. That leads us to FBI masks. Speaking of the health crisis, this story is wild and highly complex. Why don't you give the overview?
So basically, there was this Brooklyn man who claims to be infected with the coronavirus, unclear, but he got raided by the FBI because he allegedly peddled and stored massive amounts of N95 respirator masks in his home. And he's also suspected of selling a New Jersey doctor 1,000 of the masks for $12,000, which was a markup of roughly 700%.
Okay, so basically what happened here is a guy's got a bunch of masks. The claim is he's got 5,000 masks and he's selling them at a markup. And the charges against him are everything from him coughing on the FBI agents. No, it's like assault or something. And then also around medical supplies. So my take on this, and then I want to hear your take on it, is this is a really, really slippery slope. And I'll give you kind of the extreme example of what I mean. So there's two pieces to this that scare the shit out of me. The first is, in the articles, what it describes is as the police approached him, he coughed without covering his mouth. They don't describe it as like he walked up to him and coughed on them like in an aggressive manner, just that he coughed. And when he did that, he didn't cover his mouth. So if we enter a world where it is illegal to cough because of the virus, right? That's an extreme example. But if that's the world we're going to, that's a really, really dangerous world to live in, because now all of a sudden it changes the way that people think about being in public, wearing masks, right? There's a lot of ramifications to it.
Sorry.
There's little bells. Like it was emphasizing what I said. You see that? What do you think about the mask part of this?
I think it's ridiculous. I think it's absolutely ridiculous that people are trying to make money when there's literally hospitals are overwhelmed. Doctors don't have enough masks. It's a time where, like, if you're going to be a douchebag, now is not the time.
So I don't disagree with you that there's a ton of like the ethical components of this, right? And the price gouging and all that stuff is really bad. But is there a difference between him doing this and companies doing it? Like, aren't the companies just selling the masks to the hospital?
Not at a 700% markup.
True. That's definitely true. But I think that, again, slippery slope in that all of a sudden the government, like the tweet that I saw was Jameson Lopp had this tweet where he basically rewrote the headline to the article. And he said, government confiscates citizens' private property because they disagree with his investment decision. Right. And so I think all of this goes back to like, how literal do you take the Constitution? Right? The protection of private property versus in certain times, should they prevent him from doing this? And what they actually did, I think you were telling me, they confiscated the masks and took them away.
Yeah.
Right. And put them, and then actually took them away. So who knows what they're going to do with them? But just uncertain times lead to all of these nuanced questions. And there's no black or white answer.
Of course. And like, after 9/11 happened, a bunch of things changed that you could argue infringed on people's privacy, et cetera. But I think in times of global epidemic, we need to have these conversations, but probably
you're a mask. You're
a
mask truther. She wants the masks in the hospital, which is actually a good thing. When you wear a cat shirt on here and you start with "Hello, you cats," that's what we get. What is it?
Hey, you cool cats and kittens.
Oh my God, you've been practicing this?
No, do it.
No, because I would start it with "What's up? What's up? What's up?"
What's next? Notion.
All right, what happened with Notion? So Notion's a note-taking app.
Is it a note-taking app?
Or is it like a productivity thing?
Yeah.
I forget how everyone describes themselves in some weird way, but it basically can like replace the Google Suite, if you will, the G Suite. So like Docs, note-taking, Sheets, all that kind of stuff.
So right now, in a time where all these startups are laying people off, they're very uncertain about future fundraising. Notion went and raised $50 million at a $2 billion valuation. 50 from investors including Index Ventures and others. Notion had previously been valued at $800 million. So, I mean, this is interesting, right?
Well, the best part is that they're profitable, right?
Are they profitable? I didn't know
They've been
that.
profitable for a while, for like 2 years, and they don't need the money, but they said that it was a signal of stability.
But we talk about this a lot. Right. It's a signal of stability. But don't you think when you raise that big of a round, you become less disciplined with it?
Well, that is one of the risks, but I don't think every company does that, right? Because they'd only raised like less than 20 million bucks, I think, previously, and so all of a sudden they raised 17 million. Is that what it says? Yeah. Polina's got the notes. She's a smart one. Remember when I told you guys that the smart people got notes? She got the notes. I got the bullshit. So it works perfect. They raised $50 million, and it's a big valuation, but they're profitable, and they've kept a very small team. I think they've got less than 50 employees. And so it's one of these things where, like, right now, for a company to raise capital, only the best companies are going to be able to raise capital, a lot of it at great terms. And you're just building a war chest. And if you never touch it,
right,
then you basically just have the money in case things go absolutely sideways. But why not take the money if you can?
Do you think that if you're a profitable company, that's kind of the only way to raise money right now? Or do you think everybody should be trying to raise money?
Well, this goes to the whole conversation around bailouts, right? Which is a lot of the bailouts are companies that mismanaged their businesses previously. So basically what happened is, like, take the airlines. They spent majority of their free cash flow on buybacks, which there's nothing wrong with a buyback as a way to return shareholder value. It's a very tax efficient way to do it, et cetera. But now they need that capital. And so rather than run to the government and say, hey, give me the money, what they should be doing is they should be trying to raise capital, whether through the equity or debt markets, and go to private investors. The problem is that there's a dislocation between what the investors believe the business is worth and what the executives believe the business is worth, right? And so the whole argument is like, well, how much would you buy United Airlines for? Would you buy it for $1?
Like the stock?
No, like that, the whole company. Would you pay $1?
Of course I would pay
Would you pay $100?
Yeah.
Okay. Would you pay $100 million?
No.
Why not?
Because I don't have that kind of
money. No, but if you had the money.
Right now, how much is it worth?
They did $6.5 billion in EBITDA last year.
Yeah.
Okay, right. Would you do it for $1 billion?
Probably.
Probably, right?
Yeah.
So, like, there's a market to be made.
I would change their customer service. Let me tell you that.
You might be a better CEO. But, like, the whole point is that people are willing to buy the company at some price.
Yeah.
It's just there's a disagreement on that price. So what they do is they run to the government, and the government gives them advantageous terms because the government's not.
So basically, United is like a startup running out of money, trying to go to investors to get money.
Literally, that's what's happening. But it's happening in the public markets with a big Fortune 500 company, et cetera. In the private markets, right, this happens all the time. So how many companies are going to die over the next 3 months in private startup world, right, that just run out of cash? A lot of them.
Yeah.
But they're not going to get bailed out. So Notion putting money on their balance sheet basically is a way to signal, hey, we're here for the long term.
As a startup, though, how could you have even foreseen the magnitude of an event like this? Like, how much money do you think as a startup founder you should have in the bank for a rainy thunder?
Well, so this is the whole thing. So, like, there's companies that basically say, hey, look, I've got 12 months of capital. I've got 12 months of runway. I've got 18 months, 24 months,
but
right?
What as an investor, like, what is the norm?
It all depends, right? It depends on how big you are, how much cash you're burning, right? Because you can also manipulate that in the sense of, let's say that if I'm burning $1 million a month and I've got $12 million, that means I got a year of runway.
Yeah.
But if all of a sudden I then lower my burn to $500K, right? Because I lay some people off, I save costs, whatever I have to do. Now all of a sudden I have 2 years of runway, right? So it's kind of a moving scale, but ultimately what ends up happening is entrepreneurs have to remember that strong balance sheets matter. And on top of that, the number one rule of business, don't run out of money.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
If you run out of money, it's over. It's like you can't win the game if you're not playing the game anymore. Right. And so I think that a lot of these companies, that's what they're facing. They got to go to the markets to get money.
Agree. Just be profitable.
Woo! Got her to agree. That's the first one for today. We'll see if I can get her to agree more. All right. Last one. This one's a fun one. I feel like all the doom and gloom of SoftBank, WeWork, unemployment numbers, and the FBI, we had to end with a positive one. Potato Head.
So you know Zoom and like how we're all on Zoom now. Well, this company was having a meeting with all its employees, and the boss joined Zoom, and I guess she somehow opened the filters section. I don't know how to do that, but she turned herself into a potato, and then she genuinely couldn't figure out how to change her back. So the entire meeting, all these people are normal, and then there she is talking about serious things as a potato. It's pretty great.
I mean, that's absolutely
something I would do.
But like, it's hysterical at the fact that She went through the whole meeting. And then I think the reason why people know that this happened is because one of the employees took a photo and tweeted it. And the tweet went viral of like the coworkers all standing there or, sitting at their desk normal and their homes, etc. And then there's just this potato head in the corner. That's the boss.
I love her quote. She's like, I was so confused as to why I was a potato. Of all the things I could be, why a potato?
Hey, some people like potatoes. That's fine. You ever seen Toy Story? That's a great movie. Mr. Potato Head, great movie is Toy Story. Have you ever seen it?
Yeah.
You've never seen Toy Story?
Listen. So I think I've seen it, but I just I grew up not here.
Yeah, you grew up in another country.
When did Toy Story come out?
In the 90s.
Yeah, no.
When you were born. You were born in the 90s and you've never seen Toy Story?
No, because I was in Bulgaria. We were watching movies from like the 80s.
Reach for the sky. That's one of the
I was like, oh my God, what are you doing?
To infinity and beyond.
I know that.
Yeah, that's Buzz Lightyear.
Yeah, I know Buzz.
Okay, so you've seen it.
Head.
No, he's in an astronaut suit.
That's a different one. Who is Buzz with the shaved
Okay,
head?
guys, it's been a great day. Remember, while Wall Street's trying to get rich, the rest of us are trying to get our lunch money right. And she brought the lunchbox, which, by the way, this doesn't look like a lunchbox.
No, it is. Look.
No, this doesn't look like a lunchbox. This looks like a makeup kit or something else. It's not a lunchbox.
Also, this is an example of the bully taking the lunchbox. Don't touch the lunchbox.
You call me a bully?
Yeah, you just grabbed it.
All right. Well, listen, while Wall Street's trying to get rich, the rest of us trying to get our lunch money right. Polina and I appreciate you guys listening to all this every day, noon-ish. Why noon-ish? Because we don't got our shit together. Might be before noon, afternoon, right at noon, or at 5 p.m. She doesn't like when I say all that, so I'll keep saying it to keep you guys laughing, and we will see you guys tomorrow.